He said, well, it's the 90th anniversary. Could you make like just a few, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of remarks that would be appropriate for the occasion? Yeah, okay. And I get here and I look at the commencement program, and it says that Doug isn't speaking. Mrs. Lovato is the speech teacher. Mr. Shack is as eloquent as any speaker in the county. I'm supposed to make this 5 minutes of remarks about so we'll give it a try.
We can do it.
130 years ago, and a few days more than that, A.M. Shaffer was born in a small town in Pennsylvania. 92 years ago, Interstate 5 was a dirt road. 91 years ago, Dad Shaffer came to Canyonville, and the seniors have heard this story enough times that I don't need to repeat it for them. He was on his way to California, and his car broke down. We've all heard that story enough times, so I don't need to go through those details. But let me add a few things that maybe that you haven't heard. Within 13 months after Dad Shaffer arrived in Canyonville, he had built a church up on Main Street, where the Canyon Chapel is at this time. He had started his ministry in the town of Canyonville. And the following fall, after he arrived, he started teaching classes. It was not a high school. These were just Bible classes for people that were interested in learning more. And very quickly, Dad Shaffer found that many of these people did not have good basic skills in English and mathematics and didn't know much history and whatever. And so he started adding, and eventually it evolved into Canyonville Christian Academy. It wasn't a high school. That wasn't the plan at the start. When he arrived in Canyonville, there was no electricity yet in the town of Canyonville. So Dad Shaffer said, I think I will run for mayor of the town and bring electricity, work aggressively to bring electricity to the town. So within a few months after he became the mayor of Canyonville, electricity became available to the citizens and to the academy. A couple of years later, he starts the girls' dorm. Girls' dorm, that's the entire school in one building. It's 15,000 square feet. If you were to build a building of that size today, it would be a $2 million building. Dad Shaffer had very, very little. He was a man of very modest means. And to start, when they dug the basement, they didn't have tractors. They used what are called Fresnos. And a Fresno is a scoop that you drag along behind a team of horses. That's how the basement of the girls' dorm was made. The first couple of years, when they moved into the girls' dorm, he didn't have the funds to put in the plumbing yet. And so CCA was one of the few boarding schools in the country that did not have showers and had a 3-seat outhouse. Okay, so I've now given you the first 5 years of the history of the school. We've got 85 years to go, and Doug said, hey, hold it to 6 or 8 minutes. So I'm not going to go into the next 85 years, but let me tell you just a little bit about the person who founded the school. Some people called him a little bit austere. He could be an intimidating person at times. We have for our head of school, Kathy Lovato, assisted by Mr. Shaffer. Dad Shaffer was a little bit like having Moses. He was an impressive figure, but I got to know him personally. During the summers, when he wasn't eating with the students in the cafeteria, he would come to our house and have lunch and supper. And so I got to have many extended conversations and got to know him as a man with a great sense of humor. And he wasn't highly educated, but he was vastly read. Every night when he would go home, he would read books, biographies, history, and so on. Dad Shaffer was a person who really believed in education. He was an educator, even though he didn't have a great education. And one of the things that he did was he always hired the best possible person that he could get to come to be the principal of the school, lead the school academically. But Dad Shaffer had an idea of his own that he wanted to put in place. And if you were a student here when Dad Shaffer was the head of the school, your junior year, you had to do a 1,000-word thesis, and your senior year, you had to do a 10-page thesis. A couple of years ago, we found a box of these that had been stored away in some musty corner of the storeroom, and I looked over a number of these, and number one, they had to be bound. They had to have artwork on the cover. They had to have calligraphy on the cover. There's no misspelled words, and this is long before spell check. You're not allowed to have a misspelled word or a typographical error in your 10-page thesis. The thesis had to be carefully reasoned. It was on a religious or spiritual topic, and this was a requirement. If you were going to graduate from Dad Shaffer's school, you had to stand in front of the student body and read your thesis your senior year. Some colleges still require a thesis. Some majors still require a thesis. But this is what Dad Shaffer had as his standard when he was head of the school. Another thing that some of you may not have heard before, Dad Shaffer was the pastor of the church, and he took a salary from a small church in a small town. But he worked for 38 years at CCA, passed away in 1961, and he never took a salary from the academy. At one point, early on, days when school was being started, Dad Shaffer and his wife received a small inheritance, and he used that inheritance to buy West Campus. He gave what he had to begin his vision for a school. To wrap things up, one of the great verses in the Bible is found in Hebrews 12. And I've read a number of different versions of this verse, and it talks about a cloud of witnesses watching us. And the implication is those that have gone before us. In one translation, it even uses the word pioneers. The pioneers are looking down on us to see what we are going to do. And I think that perhaps this morning, in some way, I'm not a theologian. They don't let me teach Bible because they're worried about some of my ideas. But in some way, in some form, Dad Shaffer, Mother Shaffer, Helen Dunbar, Franklin Dunbar, Bob Shaffer, Eunice Hafterson, and the other people that helped start the school may be looking down on this graduation ceremony today. And then the verse goes on to say, in one translation, it says that the cloud of witnesses and pioneers is cheering us on. It's an interesting, it's not there in the King James, but it's there in some of the New Modern versions. So these founders are watching you this morning and cheering you on, and they are eager now to see what you can do. Now you get your chance, they had their chance, they gave us this school